Hey there, and welcome to DIY Projects with Pete. Today we're going to be building a log holder out of concrete, and if you find this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to help inspire more DIYers. Let's go ahead and dive right into the process. Building this round log holder involves making a mold for the concrete, filling it with concrete, and building a base for the cylinder to sit on. There are a number of ways you could build the mold, but I built mine using everyday materials you can pick up at your local hardware store that won't cost an arm and a leg. The first step is to cut circles out of melamine or plywood to help support the metal flashing, which will form against the concrete. You can find all the measurements I used in the tutorial over at ryobination.com by clicking the link in the description below. Use a jigsaw to cut each of the circles. We'll cut a total of 5, with one of the base circles being a little larger to help form the outer ring. Next, we'll cut the metal flashing down to size. Always wear gloves and protective gear for this process. Form the flashing around the circle to determine the length you'll need, and cut it using a metal snips. I cut the width of the flashing down, so the total depth of the log holder is 16 inches. Lay it flat, and then attach it to some 2x4s to help secure the flashing and hold it flat during the cutting process. I used an angle grinder to make the cut and to get it as straight as possible. However, a tin snips could also be used. Be very careful during the cutting process and make sure to wear protective equipment. Next, we'll create the frame for the inner part of the mold. It's going to look a bit like a quadruple layer cake, but having each of the circles helps prevent the flashing from collapsing when the weight of the concrete pushes against it during the pouring process. Use 2x4s as spacers between each of the circles and space them apart evenly. You can attach the spacers using screws. Now, I want to mention that you could make a mold out of other materials much easier, like large diameter Sono Tubes, foundation tubes. The problem is they are very expensive, which is why I chose to build it out of materials that are readily available and affordable. So be creative with the process if you have other ideas. Once the inner frame is assembled, attach the inner ring of flashing to the bottom and top circle by drilling pilot holes and then adding screws. Then we'll center and secure the one larger circle to the bottom of the mold, which will help hold the outer ring in place. Attach it from the underside using screws. Next, attach the outside ring of flashing to the larger circle base piece with screws. Then use a pop rivet tool to connect the seams. The concrete won't collapse the outer ring like it could the inner ring, but it can push it out. So I used some of the excess wood from cutting out the largest circle to help hold the upper part of the flashing in place and prevent it from shifting. Now on to mixing the concrete. I used Quikrete 5000 for this project, which has a pretty decent sized aggregate. You can mix in concrete fiber reinforcement as well to help increase the strength. For this project, I mixed up the concrete a little wetter than normal to help it flow more easily into the mold. Place the mold on a work surface with the upper support ring in place, and then push the concrete into the mold. You only have an 1.5-inch ring to get the concrete in, so it is a bit easier to first place the concrete on the upper circle and then slide it into the mold. Push the concrete around all sides of the circle evenly to prevent it from putting too much stress on any one side. Lift the table up and down during the process to help vibrate the concrete, which will help push out air bubbles that create voids in the concrete. It does put additional stress on the flashing, so be somewhat careful and don't shake the table too much. Then finish filling the mold and smooth out the surface using your hands or a small trowel. This will be the back side of the log holder. Let the concrete cure for a good 3 to 4 days and then begin the demolding process. Remove the outer flashing first and the larger bottom circle. Next, we'll begin disassembling the inner frame. I used a jigsaw, drill, rubber mallet, and a little elbow grease to help remove the inside frame. Take your time with this process and be careful not to put too much stress on the concrete, which could chip it or cause issues as the concrete is still green and continuing to cure. Now we'll build the base for the log holder. I used walnut, but you can use whatever type of wood you'd like. I milled it down on a planer and then used the large circle as a template to draw the arc on the wood, which will match the arc of the concrete cylinder. Center the circle and then use a pencil to draw the arc. You'll need a total of 2 of these supports. Use a jigsaw to follow the line you drew and cut the arcs. Take your time so you get a nice and even cut. Then use a sander to remove cut marks and to smooth out the wood. Connect the two supports using a couple short 1x6 boards. I used a pocket hole jig to create hidden holes on the underside ends of each board. Once you've drilled the pocket holes, butter up the ends of each shorter connecting board with some wood glue. Then attach the short boards to the two arced support boards with some wood screws. It helps to use a few clamps during this process. Once all the screws are in, wipe up any excess glue and allow the glue to cure. Next, do a final sanding. Lastly, apply a finish of your choice. I wiped on a couple coats of Danish oil as a finish. And whenever using finishes like Danish oil or linseed oil, which can both spontaneously combust, make sure to spread out the rags on a concrete surface or outside to dry completely before tossing. Now that the base is drying, we'll do the finish work for the concrete. Always wear safety equipment, and then use a sander to remove rough edges from the concrete and to smooth it out. Next, fill in voids as you see necessary. I had a few more than I wanted, so I mixed a little Portland cement with water to create a slurry to fill some of the voids, although I wanted to keep some since I like the natural look for this particular project. Allow the slurry mixture to cure after applying, and then use a sander or a Scotch pad to remove any excess. Then apply 5 or 6 coats of a water-based concrete sealer to seal the concrete and to give it a finished look. The sealer dries pretty quickly, so you don't need to wait long between applying each coat. Allow the last coat to dry completely, and then find a friend to help move and set the concrete on its base to make sure it has a nice, snug fit. And that's all there is to building your own concrete log holder. Go ahead and put your new concrete creation in place, then head outside to get some fresh air and chop some wood. And I found a cool log carrier made by Skonzig that hauls a ton of wood, enough to fill an entire concrete log holder. Lastly, put that firewood to good use and enjoy. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's project, and I hope it inspires you to build something out of concrete as well. As you can see, there's all sorts of possibilities. I'd love to see what you come up with, and if you have ideas for DIY projects you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please comment below. To check out more information about this project and many others, head over to ryobination.com. Thanks again for watching, and cheers from Montana. And if you're interested in checking out other concrete projects like the square log holder, please subscribe to the channel and then click on the thumbnail. Cheers!